So this is a non-spoiler review of Freaky, and what can I say about this? Well, I didn't have really high expectations, so that's good. You should probably come in with middling expectations. I think the filmmaking is a 5 to a 6. I would not say it's a bad film. It's not genuinely terrible, so I shouldn't be angry with it. It just felt very, very frustrating. I have to conclude after this, if I see Christopher Landon's name as a writer or director, I'll probably be very cautious in paying full price. I paid $15 for this. That amount is much, much too high for something like Freaky. However, if it's $7 to $8 where you're at, it's safe to go to the theaters. I would recommend it. I think for a theatrical experience, it did okay. It does have certain elements, though, that drag it down. The editing is very choppy. The plot is barely okay. It's very nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. Costumes are good. Lighting is a little off in certain places. The performances, which usually should save a film, are here they're just okay. They're not terrible. They're just like kind of uninspired, and I don't blame the actors that much. It just seems I think the director came in trying to do more of a comedy than a horror, and the horror elements are just grafted on. And believe me when I say this is no exaggeration. The amount of films he plows through is insane. This thing is partly Scream, it's partly Friday the 13th, it's partly Halloween, it's partly Chainsaw Massacre, it's partly Jaws. I mean, it's like the amount of stuff they go through is insane. It's just they keep referencing stuff. Freddy, Jason, it's all here. They just keep going through it, and usually I don't mind that. It's not that the quotations are annoying, it's just they didn't add anything. Like, there are just a few shots where they basically stylized the villain. Those are well done. He really looks scary in certain scenes, like with fog. That's about it. Everything else here is very, very borrowed, very derivative, very uncreative, and they do have a few twists in the plot. But if you once you guess the twist very early on, because it happens very fast. In fact, it's so shockingly quick that you're going to be confused for a while. You're like, wait, what happened? And then you figure it out, and it's like, oh, this is basically Child's Play. The more I kept thinking about this is basically a Child's Play film. This is basically the Chucky story. But the problem is the knockoff Jason. I'm not going to use the name that they give the character because it doesn't have a character. They don't really give a backstory. It's supposed to be like this big mythical monster, but really it's just a guy, and he has a quest with a dagger. I can't even say more because it would be spoilers. I can't even specify the genre. That's how kind of fragile the film is. If you just say a few sentences of like what the plot is and what it is and how problematic it just collapses. There's really not much holding it up. So I can't even specify the genre. I'd have to say it's a high school film. It's a comedy. It's also a horror film. But if I got into what its specific subgenre is, and it is a very specific thing they're doing, then you'd be like, oh, okay, I get it now. And I think, oh, this could actually be really interesting because the premise actually sounds really, really intriguing. But then when they do it, you're like, oh, okay, I guess. Because when you think it through, it's like, but that doesn't make sense because the person would be vulnerable. It has the usual problem that people are being very stupid and ignorant. But here's the thing. This is what separates an okay director from a great director. Because all throughout this film, I kept thinking, this deserves to be on Netflix. They're only using 5 to 6 locations. Blumhouse is really good with its budget. Those are not the things you should be thinking about when seeing a film. You should be really absorbed in giving the characters and the whole world a chance. You should be really absorbed into the mythos of the film. This never accomplishes it. Has so much potential to be so much better, but it never really reaches that potential. And I kept thinking, what is the major problem here? And I think it's that, and it's ironic because the director's like, we're not doing what you think. Like, you'll think right away, this is Scream, right? This has so many marks of Scream in everything. I mean, there is so much of Scream throughout the whole film. Because I'm very critical of the Scream trilogy onto itself, but it made me appreciate a lot more how Wes Craven is a very precise director. How when he wants certain things in certain places, it's being done very deliberately. Yes, sometimes it's frustrating that people are ignorant in certain places and the twists are kind of silly, but in retrospect, it is like a very well-crafted music composition. In fact, my problem with it was too corporate, it's too mechanical. This is also very corporate, but very stupid. So it's not creative, but it's more chaotic, but it doesn't add anything. Stylistically, you think, okay, they're just going through so many crazy references, so many quotes. I mean, for instance, one character is called Strode. So I hope that's an intentional reference, but you can't tell. Like the town, the characters, they don't really have much of a personality. I mean, I'm not joking. I literally forgot most of the characters' names. I had to look it up again, and I'm just be like, and when you look it up, you're like, oh, okay. And it's just so safe. For instance, they have a gay character that's very flamboyant. They have a black character commenting on the whiteness of the high school. You have a girl who plays, a mascot as a beaver. And I get it. Beaver is a slang term for vagina. I mean, the humor and the tricks are just so plain. Like, I was struggling to figure out what exactly is the thing behind this thing. And it's like, I guess it's a girl power theme. I guess that's what it is. I guess it's like, it's interesting that a woman now is a serial killer. Apparently, what I found really stunning is that this person seems genuinely ignorant that that's actually, there are quite a few films on that. And as far as I could tell, this doesn't reference any of it. So it just references the very big popular franchises and the big horror films, but it doesn't seem to be very well aware of a lot more smaller serial killer films that really deal with the subject, because this has been tackled before. And I, just stunned that even though it is doing a lot of allusions and quotations, it doesn't really, they're not very deep. They're just like very plain. They're just like, oh, it's this thing, and then it's this thing. And so even when the plot makes its twist, you're like, okay, right, I got it. But I have to say, I was never bored. The people I saw it with did enjoy it. It wasn't a packed house. In fact, stunningly, because I gave it $15, it was the #1 thing at the box office that weekend. So it was like, wow. So I guess this has a lot of virtues. It made me appreciate Wes Craven a lot more. That was good. I can give it points for that. I guess I'm a little bit more appreciative of, even with its flaws, that Scream is a very, solid story, more solid than I think. So there's that. And onto itself, I'm going to give it a 6.5. I think I'm being very generous. It was never a bad film, but it was like, there's such a gap here because Blumhouse put out Glass, and Glass is amazing. Glass is an astonishing film. Like, comparing this to Glass, it's insane. It's like Glass is 1,000 times better. And I'm well aware of the criticisms. I'm well aware it has flaws, but I could easily defend that as a 9 out of 10. Just shocked that it's the same production house. So I was walking out of the theater just frightened and scared, but not in the way I think they intended. I was like, I hope this is just an anomaly, it's a fluke, and I hope this is not the future of Blumhouse, because people are panicking that, theaters are just going to have blockbusters. Well, if Freaky is telling us anything, no, it's going to have a lot of genre films, but the genre films probably don't deserve to be there. This is really more of a rent it than see it, but if you get a chance to see it, I do think it has some really clever moments with music. It does have a lot of plain stuff like Rihanna, but there are some sequences which were really well done, really had a lot of style, really had a lot of verb. But I'm not joking, that's like 10% of the film. Most of the film is very ho-hum. And towards the end, it's really strange. I mean, there's just this weird, choppy editing. I mean, I was almost laughing at it. It was like Tenet. It's like that stupid and bad. It's just really weird and chaotic. And it's just like, okay. I was watching this very depressed, with good reason, by the way. I was just dealing with a lot of issues, and I was hoping not for a masterpiece, but something to lift me up, and this didn't do it. But in a way, it's really weird. It actually did make me kind of glad, because it feels like, wow, if something like this can come out from a writer-director, I should have no problem making a film. But it is also depressing, because if I go to the studio saying, hey, I want to be the writer-director for this, I'm sure they're going to say, well, what about Freaky? But it's like, well, Freaky made money, so there you go. So, I don't know, you can look at it 2 ways, saying that, okay films will have an okay future in Hollywood, but really great filmmaking will be really tough. So it's kind of a twisted legacy when you think about it. So this is the non-spoiler review of Freaky, a very potentially interesting attempt at genre, but it never quite gets there, but it's okay. I'm making it perhaps a little worse than it seems, but this lacks the magic. This really lacks the magic. It's a lot of references, but a lot of style, but no substance. That's Freaky in short. All right, thanks for listening. Have a good day.